So Angela Santa Barbara is a New York Assemblyman from Schenectady. Schenectady. Okay. Oh gosh, guys, I'm sorry about this. All right. Schenectady. Okay. EOPA, National Leadership Council, and Army Reserves. Angela inspires families, friends, and colleagues with his devotion to helping people and enriching his community. Born in the city of Schenectady, he is a lifelong resident of Schenectady County, currently residing in the town of Rotterdam. Angelo attended public schools and graduated from the State University of New York at Albany, where he earned a Bachelor of Science degree. Angelo worked in civil engineering for more than 15 years before taking office in the New York State Assembly. He served as the president of the Capital District Chapter New York State Society of Professional Engineers. Angelo served in the U.S. Army Reserve for 8 years with an honorable discharge in 1998. He has remained involved with veteran service organizations and was the founder of AMVETS Post 35 in his hometown of Rotterdam, where he served as post commander.
Thank you for that introduction. It brought me back from when I started my career. But thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thank you all for being here. This is a very important topic. This is my third press conference with EOPA, and all topics that have been relevant to my work in the State Assembly. I represent the 111th Assembly District, which is upstate New York, capital region, includes Schenectady. So that's where I grew up. It's a small city. It's not New York City, but it's a small city in the upstate region. And in my capacity as a state representative, I serve on the Committee on Energy. I've been there for every year I've been in office, so going on 12 years next year. I serve in that committee. Also, the Veterans Affairs Committee, something very important to me. It shows my dedication to what we're talking about here today: national security and the well-being of our residents and the people I represent. In the course of my service, I've witnessed firsthand some of the devastating impacts of climate change in some of these communities. And as a matter of fact, in my first year in 2013, we had a devastating flood along the Mohawk River that devastated a number of counties. And it was, again, my first term in office, and I'm witnessing this devastation caused by climate change, where communities that really didn't have too many issues in the past now are literally entire communities had to relocate or find someplace else to live. And it took the next 3 years, so finishing that term and into my next term, and millions of dollars invested to build these communities back. So the extreme weather since then has continued. There are a number of communities that continue to see this. In Schenectady, there's a small section called the Stockade. It's a very historical area. And it continues to see flooding. We have done some mitigation, but they still experience, from anytime we have extreme weather, we look out for that area. We have seen how these communities in just one small district in the Assembly can be affected. So these experiences will fueled my commitment to championing environmental policies that prioritize sustainable communities and the well-being of our citizens, the people we represent. One significant milestone, and I've talked about this before in past press conferences, is one significant milestone of this commitment of the state and myself supporting this and helping get it passed is the New York Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act that was passed in 2019, and it really was a groundbreaking piece of legislation. It addresses climate change through a number of different initiatives focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and promoting clean energy, and we have done quite well in New York. We've set ambitious goals. We're trying to meet those goals. And what we're going to talk about here today is important because it supports those goals. It also emphasizes what was mentioned earlier, social equity by investing in renewable projects in low-income housing and prioritizing disadvantaged communities. These are areas that have suffered the brunt of pollution for years and years and climate change. And it prioritizes those investments, which is great, things that are happening right now. So we're here today to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act, which complements our vision in New York for a sustainable future. And this legislation is great for us because it plays a pivotal role in steering us towards that clean energy economy, enhancing our energy security, and reducing costs, which is important. Getting costs down so that people can participate in clean energy. By embracing renewable energy, our goal, of course, is energy independence, reduce reliance on fossil fuels, and ultimately that benefits consumers nationwide. The Inflation Reduction Act is a key component of what I think is a transformative era in New York State. And because it includes various measures to help lower those energy costs, such as rebates, tax credits, and renewable energy adoption. It also allocates funds for grants to support energy efficient building codes and makes a substantial investment, $34 billion in clean power generation and storage. So that's really significant. Fostering new jobs. Of course, this supports the economy as well. And these are good paying jobs. And again, we're trying to, from the local economy all the way up to, what the state is looking at. This is very significant for us. So myself, I served in the reserves right out of high school, 8 years. So as a military veteran, I also want to talk about the critical link between clean energy investments and national security. The Inflation Reduction Act is not just about combating the climate crisis. It's designed to bolster American energy security, and that's a big part of what we're talking about here today. It supports the manufacturing of clean energy technologies, stimulates local economies, and incentivizes small businesses to adopt energy efficient practices and clean vehicles. It also addresses, as I just said, the urgent need to shift towards electric vehicles. In New York, we have made significant progress, and what this does, it provides upfront discounts for electric vehicles, plans to expand charging stations along highways. That's part of making this work, and something that we have tried to advance as well, and aims at significant pollution reduction. We just talked about how important that is for especially marginalized communities and areas that have seen pollution year after year. So the good news for us is that this supports a lot of the efforts that we already have in place. We have set ambitious goals to increase the percentage of new light-duty vehicle sales that will be zero-emission vehicles, reaching 35% by 2026, 68% by 2030, and 100% by 2035. So it is an ambitious goal, but with the IRA and the assistance that we're receiving from the federal government, I think it's possible to be able to do this. Moreover, the Inflation Reduction Act promotes climate smart agriculture. I also serve in the Agriculture Committee. We talk about rural resources quite a bit. It's a significant part of New York State's economy. So you think about all the pieces that this piece of legislation touches, it really does benefit an entire state and the entire country. It offers clean energy tax credits for rural electric cooperatives, upgrades for affordable housing, which if anybody saw our last legislative session, it was a top priority, something that was discussed the entire time from January all the way through, and is still being discussed now for the upcoming session. So that is important to us as well. And investments in strengthening forest and community protection. So in essence, the Inflation Reduction Act and the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act go beyond just being pieces of legislation. They embody our commitment to the people who represent the environment and our collective future. Together, they empower us to lead the way in building a sustainable, resilient, and equitable New York and nation. Through these actions, we can create a legacy that ensures a clean, secure, and healthy future for generations to come. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Angelo. And next we have Gregor Iligan. He's Hawaii's Vice Speaker of the State House of Representatives, an Air National Guard veteran, and EOPA's National Leadership Council. With a strong background in public service, Vice Speaker Gregor has dedicated his career to serving the people of Hawaii. His journey began with a 6-year enlistment in the Air National Guard, which laid the foundation for his commitment to public service. In 2012 and 2014, the people of Hawaii County's 4th District elected him as their council member. During his tenure, he actively chaired the Planning and Housing Committees and contributed as a member of the Finance and Public Works Committees. In 2020 and again in 2022, the people of Hawaii State House District 4 chose Vice Speaker Yeager to represent them. His leadership roles have included serving as vice chair for the Committee on Transportation and as a committee member on Housing and Finance. Recognizing his dedication and service, he was appointed Vice Speaker of Hawaii State House of Representatives in 2022.
Ladies and gentlemen, aloha. Thank you, Anna, for the introduction. Today, I stand before you to discuss the Inflation Reduction Act, which will help our nation and my home state of Hawaii to move toward a sustainable future. The Inflation Reduction Act is not just legislation. It's a beacon of hope and a promise for a cleaner and more prosperous America. Climate change has shadowed us for too long, challenging our way of life, economy, and natural resources. With the Inflation Reduction Act, we are taking the most significant step in US history to confront this climate crisis head-on. The Inflation Reduction Act is about more than reducing inflation. It is about securing our sustainable energy future. It's about transforming how we power our homes, businesses, and communities, all while ensuring these changes are affordable and accessible. As a state with the most expensive electricity, our families and businesses could use some relief. Hundreds of thousands of low and moderate income households in Hawaii are eligible for rebates from the Inflation Reduction Act, which can cover from 50 to 100% of the cost of installing new energy efficient electric appliances, including heat pumps, water heaters, clothes dryers, stoves, and ovens. The Inflation Reduction Act invests in renewable energy, like solar panels and other technologies that safeguard our environment. We will expand the local production of energy. These investments would allow Hawaii to get closer to meeting our state's goal of 100% renewable by 2045. The Inflation Reduction Act will create numerous green, high-paying jobs in our local communities. In 2021, Hawaii employed 12,873 workers in clean energy jobs. The Inflation Reduction Act will expand these opportunities and establish tax credits to include bonuses for businesses that pay a prevailing wage so workers can earn a good paycheck as we build our clean energy future. But most importantly to Hawaii, the Inflation Reduction Act is about our keiki, the Hawaiian word for children. It's about leaving them a Hawaii that is healthier, safer, and more vibrant than the one we inherited. It's about ensuring that the beauty of our islands can be enjoyed for generations to come. As we embark on this journey, let us remember that change is not easy. It requires commitment, collaboration, and courage. Together, as a community united by our commitment to the environment and our dedication to our people, we can turn the promise of the Inflation Reduction Act into a reality. Thank you to EOPA for providing the space and the resources to allow us to understand how to bring IRA funding to our states. I value the organization's commitment to protect and preserve our environment and this beautiful country. Thank you to all the organizations who sponsored this summit, and thank you to all the men and women who serve.
Thank you, Gregor. Next, we have John Carter. He is the CEO of Carter Brothers and IntelliVolt, and also a Navy veteran. John is a growth strategist with deep and diverse management expertise in acquisitions and integration. He leads one of the nation's top minority management service providers. Carter Brothers is a minority business enterprise and national management service and solution company. says, I am proud to be working with historically Black colleges and universities to leverage the Inflation Reduction Act, one of the most significant clean energy and climate laws in U.S. history, to generate unprecedented workforce training opportunities for students of color and create significant carbon reduction opportunities for underestimated communities across America. Clean energy is building a new American workforce. As we work together with HBCUs to advance the future of energy, we will not only bring the market the latest technologies in renewable energy, but also the jobs and careers that are the foundation of this industry. Welcome, John, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank everybody for coming. First of all, she kind of said everything I wanted to say, but I think a couple of things so I'll just kind of speak from more of inside than a speech. But two things. I think the Inflation Act is the single most aggressive act ever done by the government. I think the opportunity to go in and work in undeveloped communities with historic Black colleges is unprecedented. And I think for us to be able to go in there, take advantage of not only historic Black colleges, but the communities that surround them, to be able to give kids a second chance, to work with them so they can get a job in a space that they would have never looked at before. So I look forward to working with the team. I'm excited about being up here on the panel. We appreciate everybody for coming. Thank you.
Thanks so much, John. Next, we have Stephanie Kifowit, an Illinois State Representative for the 84th District, a Marine veteran, and EOPA's National Leadership Council. Stephanie proudly served her country in the U.S. Marine Corps and served the residents of the city of Aurora as alderman for over 9 years before becoming a state representative. She has a record of fighting for veterans, seniors, and the most vulnerable in our community. She has made it a priority to introduce and support legislation that would assist veterans and help restore integrity to state government. During her tenure, she has passed legislation to lower veteran suicide, reduce property taxes, and provide services for elderly, disabled, and children. As a former financial advisor, she helped families make the best long-term decisions for their future. She now brings that experience to Springfield and is a leader in ensuring that the state of Illinois has a balanced and responsible budget each year. Thank you, Stephanie.
Good morning. As was mentioned, Stephanie Kifowit, State Representative of the 84th District, representing the great state of Illinois. I am just honored and really speechless to be on this distinguished panel with so many fellow veterans. I served active duty in the United States Marine Corps, and my son is currently serving in the United States Navy. So definitely service is very, very strong in our family, and it's really, really important that we leave, as was mentioned, our children a better tomorrow than we have today. So we're here to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act on behalf of elected officials for Protecting America, which I appreciate holding this press conference. And Illinois has been the leader with regards to climate and with regards to taking climate change very seriously. What climate change has meant to Illinois, as my colleague has mentioned, Illinois also has a significant agricultural economy. We are the #2 producer in corn. We're the #1 producer in soybeans. And actually, we are the #1 producer in pumpkins. So as you all enjoy your Thanksgiving pumpkin pie, those pumpkins come from the great state of Illinois, most likely. So what happens with climate change in Illinois is it really does affect our agricultural economy. Even though many individuals look at Illinois as Chicago, and Chicago is a very strong economic engine. Our agriculture is a strong economic engine as well. We've had, as was mentioned by my colleague here, excessive flooding that has really affected our crops. On the flip side, we've had excessive droughts. So we've also are looking at water shortages, the aquifer, with regards to where many of our suburbs draw their water from is drying up. And so now we have to look to alternative water supplies such as Lake Michigan, and we are concerned as the water quality and very keen to making sure that Lake Michigan provides the water that we need for our state. We also look at air pollution, as was mentioned, and as we know, the fires from Canada affected the great state of Illinois and our air quality for quite a significant amount of time. And those things really do affect not only our state, but several other states. So air quality is very, very important as well. And air quality with Chicago having a population of about 3 million individuals and Cook County having a population of about 6 million. Obviously, the more cars we can get off the road that are polluters and the more cars we can get on the road that are environmentally sound is always a benefit. The great state of Illinois has 13 million individuals in population, so we definitely strive to be the role model. And we appreciate the Inflation Reduction Act because when states can work with government that functions properly, that passes good policies, that helps us do a better job as we do for our residents. In 2021, we passed the REV Act. And the REV Act is a goal to get 1 million electric vehicles on Illinois roads by 2030. And we just recently announced businesses coming in. And this is an economic driver. So we've had EV Box, which is moving into Illinois. They are going to make fast charging stations right there in the great state of Illinois, not overseas, but here in America. We also have Groton, Rivian, and Lion school buses. We're producing electric school buses that go throughout the United States to help maybe alleviate that pollution. And then what else are we doing? We passed the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, as my colleague talked about. We are here to support jobs and support marginalized communities so that we can lift everybody up with regards to clean energy. And what this does is we were nation leading equity process in our CEJA, our Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. CEJA is what we call it. And we're going to have 100% clean energy by 2050. And we're also prioritizing with regards to the reductions in carbon emissions, where we have our aggressive timeline, as I said, 100% renewable energy by 2050, and new jobs, equitable share of jobs and wealth that is generated by our CEJA legislation partnering with the federal government to, as my colleague also said, bring in jobs and monies that we can use locally. So we are also looking at all types of renewable energy, wind, solar, and also we just lifted a ban on nuclear. We in Illinois believe that we need to look at all the carbon free energy sources that we need. So the IRA, what we are looking at here, as my colleague mentioned, is reducing energy costs, good paying jobs, and small business support. And in Illinois, we are focusing on electric vehicles to make sure that we have the charging stations, the battery storage that we need, and the partnership between the state and the functional federal government and the legislation that they pass and the legislation we pass, so that we can work together to make sure that, again, that the world we leave for our children is better than the world we have today. So thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, an honor to be again with this distinguished panel and this guest and this amazing organization. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And next, I have Alex, but this is Lacey. Okay. Mayor Lacey Beatty from Beaverton, Oregon. She was elected Beaverton's mayor in 2020 and took office in January 2021. Prior to serving as mayor, she served for 6 years on Beaverton City Council. Before joining the City Council, she was a volunteer for the city's Visioning Advisory Committee, serving as vice chair. She is engaged in the community, including serving on the boards of Home Plate, Youth Services, and Community Action. She commits to making our community even more diverse, inclusive, and welcoming. Mayor Beatty previously worked in public health, managing school-based health centers in 5 school districts in 2 counties. She served 5 years of active duty in the U.S. Army as a radiology specialist and a combat medic, and served in the 1st Infantry Division during the Iraq War. Mayor Beatty has shared that her military background is the relentless driving force that keeps her moving forward every day. She is the youngest ever elected official and first woman mayor in Beaverton's history. Welcome.
Good morning. I am Lacey Beatty, the very lucky mayor of Beaverton, Oregon. My husband, Major Beatty, who's an active duty National Guard officer, is at home with our two daughters, and he just sent me a photo of them in the morning. It's a good reminder of what we're doing here today about our young people. The vice mayor, my daughter, the 6-year-old, was really excited. She was hoping to see me on TV. Normally she watches me on public access. So this is a bit of an elevation from that. So I appreciate everyone being here today. I've seen a need and an urgent action to talk about climate change. In Beaverton in 2020, the skies were red due to a devastating forest fire that engulfed our region. My perspective has shifted that year, as it did for many Oregonians, on the real effect that climate change would have on our lives. The following year, Beaverton endured an unprecedented heat dome, with temperatures reaching nearly 120 degrees. Many members of our community did not have access to air conditioning, putting their health and well-being at risk. I remember laying in bed as a mom looking at Facebook, as when moms do at 4 a.m. when they can't sleep. And I started getting instant messages from other moms that were saying that landlords were asking them to take out their window air conditioning unit during this heat dome. Portland, our neighbor, was experiencing high deaths in public buildings. We didn't do anything to not have deaths in our community. We just got very lucky. So I went to the office as the mayor. I sat down with our staff and I said, what can we do, right? There's got to be a building code. There's got to be something. What do we do? Well, it turns out the state of Oregon, you, as a renter, you do not have access to air conditioning. You had access to heat. Oregon is typically known for our cooler weathers. We've never experiencing something in the 120 degrees. So I went to work with other levels of government. We changed that state law last year and the governor signed it in. That's what we're doing now. I say that's important, but it really, when I became mayor, I didn't think I'd have to be in our state house changing building codes. So people had bare necessities like eating and air conditioning. And while I'm very proud of that legislation, I'm very proud that the governor signed it, and I was very proud to build the coalition to do it. Imagine what a tenacious mayor could have done if I wasn't focusing on climate-related emergencies. Like, we could have been building more pipes in schools and infrastructure and bridges and all the things we're talking about here today. So that I think is really important. Oregon has witnessed years of persistent drought. Yes, in a state where rain falls out of the sky every day, we are actually in a drought. Beaverton has prioritized water resiliency, while many of the cities in our state can't. We are investing in underground storage wells, aquifer storage wells. We're fortifying our pipes. We sit on a Cascadia subduction zone with the largest earthquake fault lines, and most of our infrastructure will not withstand a Cascadia level event. That's why the IRA is helping us do so much of the good work we do. We know people in emergency situations that face climate or natural disasters, they often die of lack of access to resources. So that's why it's important that mayors like me focus on the pipes underground, but our budgets are not going to allow it. That's why I'm really proud to partner with the federal administration that values cities. Cities are a level of government of last resort. We're the ones in front of the cameras when things go wrong. We're the ones talking to the community and consoling them and encouraging them and doing that. I love our state reps and our senators. They get to sit in our Salem, our capital, and do great work about bills in the future. But mayors are the boots on the ground that have to lead during crisis. It's crucial to acknowledge that these environmental challenges have only escalated since I took office. And without actions, they will continue to worsen for the foreseeable future. And yes, climate change creates security implications. At local levels, the repercussions of climate change are directly affecting the health and prosperity of our community members. Extreme weather events, heat fires, and wildfires pose a very significant risk to our resiliency and well-being. When we had that heat dome, when it hit 120 degrees, people were buying air conditioning and selling them third market for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. You couldn't drive an 8-hour radius out of Oregon to buy an air conditioner that year. And so that has a huge impact on people's finances. Like, where you live, how much money you make should not determine in America if you live or die. It's so important that we start thinking about these on a larger scale. On a global scale, climate change exacerbates conflicts and displaces communities. It's essential for us to recognize that climate-related crises can have far-reaching crises or far-reaching impact to our national security and stability as a country. The United States and its allies currently rely heavily on nations that don't necessarily align with our values for vital resources. Reducing our independence on foreign or energy sources is the only way to help our economy be self-sufficient. But it's also a crucial step towards safeguarding our national security. I often talk about national security as hand in hand with what we're doing, and people look at me kind of crazy, but as a veteran of the Iraq War, I know firsthand what people do for natural resources. I've seen it in not only my combat days, but now as the mayor, I realize how incredibly important it is that we focus on things like that. We should be doing things like the Inflation Reduction Act. As a mayor, I worked with the president and his team to bring money home to Beaverton during COVID. We can be trusted by the president to deliver on the ground. So that's why you see so many mayors excited about the Inflation Reduction Act, because we know how to put money to work right away. No one knows my community better than me, I guarantee it. I go to the grocery store, they find me. I go to the park, they find me. I drop my daughter off at school, they find me. And I hear the stories about the roads that need to be built, our bridges that are disastrous shape. And even in our city that is rated really high in the Northwest for our ability, our roads look really awesome and great. We're starting to lack the resources to maintain them when we're fighting things like COVID and wildfires and heat and emergency. Prosperous future for all Americans, and my daughters, the vice mayor and the vice mayor of Beaverton. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Beatty. Next, we have Alex, who is the president and co-founder of EOPA. And thank you so much for having all of us, Alex. After Alex was elected to the Maine House of Representatives, he became one of the most active members, sponsoring and co-sponsoring 155 bills his first term and 136 his second. In total, he sponsored 14 successful pieces of legislation and co-sponsored 98 successful bills. He won the Reed Award for the Best Public Affairs Campaign in 2011 after he co-founded and ran Operation Free, a coalition of veterans working on energy and climate security. He participated and led State Department delegations to South Asia, and he serves and advises on the board of the Veterans Campaign and the board of the Salon Center for Research and Publishing. He's partnered with the Truman National Security Project and founded the Maine New Leaders Council. Alex is an adjunct professor at the Veterans Campaign at the University of San Francisco for their Masters in Public Leadership program. He is a certified trainer with the New Leaders Council, the Truman Project, and a leadership coach with Choice Center Leadership University. He served in the Marine Corps Infantry and has deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. Alex is currently a public affairs officer with the Navy Reserve. Thank you, Alex, for hosting, and welcome.
Thank you, Anna, for a kind introduction, and thank you everyone for coming up here early after a wonderful evening last night. So I'm a co-founder of Elected Officials to Protect America, and one of the reasons I founded EOPA is based on my experiences overseas. And when I was in the Marine Corps, particularly in Iraq, we were on a usual patrol, and we came, it was about dusk, and there's a lot of dust in the air actually, so you couldn't really see that far. And we came across this line of cars, trucks, and tractors, really as far as the eye could see. And of course, we were curious. And then as we got closer to the front of it, we began to realize they were lined up for fuel. And it really, really struck me how vulnerable they were because they were dependent on this single source of energy. In addition, because it was getting dark, we had a curfew, and they rioted against us because of their need for that single source of energy, and they were willing to risk their lives for it. And on the bigger scale, unfortunately, we're doing the same thing with OPEC and other autocratic nations, which OPEC basically is a group of autocratic nations that's a cartel. And between ourselves and our allies, because it's a global oil market, and we're dependent on this single source of energy. And particularly, this is being shown in Ukraine on a very unfortunate scale. So with the Inflation Reduction Act, it is part of the solution to decouple ourselves from this dependency on the source of energy in which autocratic nations primarily control. And that's the exciting thing about it. It's an amazing solution that's really tangible and a historic investment. We can get to 40 to 43% reduction in carbon pollution by 2030 with the Inflation Reduction Act, as long as we implement it well, right? And the next 10% or so can be done through rulemaking, so ensuring clean car standards and EPA standards. So it's actually an extremely attainable goal that we can do this. Bloomberg did a study that by 2050, we'd be up to 74% clean energy worldwide if we did nothing, right? So the great thing is the IRA is able to accelerate it, and that's where public policy is so important. Because we know the solutions, we need to accelerate them to hit these goals that we know will alleviate human suffering around the world and increase our security, increase our health. So the wonderful thing about the IRA is that we have the solutions here. One of the reasons we're having this conference today is how do we do this effectively too? Because traditionally, a lot of communities, particularly Justice 40 communities, don't necessarily know what programs are out there. They don't know the criteria and then how they apply. And so we formed a task force with the Department of Energy and other agencies supporting them to be able to say, hey, in this community, right, in the Beaverton, Oregon, what is available? How can we bring it there to alleviate the extreme heat, right? And so we're bringing lawmakers together, businesses who care about climate, and finance, public and private finance, and bringing them together as a team to be able to accelerate things, get the IRA to the communities who normally never see it in traditional grants. So that's what the exciting thing about what's happening today. And we're looking forward to seeing the three communities really interact at the Department of Energy and at the dinner afterwards. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. And lastly, we have John Polymenny. He's a PhD in Climate Energy Emergency and Energy Security Task Force Chair and a New York Council member. John is a Schenectady City Council member. Schenectady, I'm so sorry. Schenectady City Council member and EOPA Department of Energy Task Force Chair and serves on the New York Leadership Council. He's an Associate Professor of Economics at the University of Albany, New York. His research interests examine the intersection between economic development and the environment. This includes energy efficiency and sustainability, economic development, and sustainable agriculture. Dr. Polymenny was awarded the Senior Fulbright Fellow in Romania in 2009, where he worked at the Academy of Economic Studies, as well as the Institute for Economic Forecasting in the Romanian National Academy in Bucharest. Dr. Polymenny is an honorary member of the Scientific Council of the Romanian National Academy of Science, National Institute for Economic Research, and the Institute of Economic Forecasting. Thank you so much for coming, John.
Thank you. The historic Inflation Reduction Act is much more than the nearly $370 billion in federal money to attack the climate crisis. This money is an opportunity to reset and re-examine our economy and how it interacts with our environment. The IRA will set us apart in creating a sustainable economy, one that creates jobs, furthers environmental justice, and lowers costs for families. A new economy for a new, cleaner era in the United States. In New York State, where I live, the IRA has an estimated impact of more than $34 billion in clean energy generation and storage between now and 2030. Tax credits will further expand these opportunities, all of which will create thousands of new high-paying jobs at the prevailing wage. Combined with investment in workforce development, many New Yorkers will be lifted into the middle class. Small businesses in New York will also benefit from investments in energy efficiency improvements that will save them money in utility costs, as they will be able to install solar power, heat pumps, and purchase clean trucks and vans for their fleet. New York households will benefit from investments that will enable them to purchase efficient electric appliances, heat pumps, water heaters, and much more. Money will be available for households to install solar and battery storage systems, as well as other household equipment. New York State has some of the highest utility costs in the country, but these investments will save families money that they can now use for their families. Rural areas in New York will also benefit from climate-smart agricultural practices, reducing their costs and increasing their output. The agricultural sector is one of the most energy-consuming and environmentally polluting economic sectors in our economy. These funds will help change that. Improvements in rural electrical supply will provide a reliable, affordable source of clean energy, boosting resiliency. Communities in New York will be much more resilient from the impacts of climate change. The IRA will upgrade affordable housing that can be flood-proof, storm-resistant, and get a clean energy upgrade that is less susceptible to the effects of climate change, such as extreme heat and flooding and droughts. In my community in Schenectady, we have seen this, as Angelo has spoken about. In the Stockade area, floods were commonplace in the last few years. Those used to be only an occasional occurrence. Now we have families who are devastated, and we have to rehouse them. And to see the looks on their faces as we have to take them from their homes and help them rebuild their lives, this money will help prevent that from happening again. New Yorkers will benefit from cleaner air, with significant reductions in pollution, resulting in an estimated 100,000 fewer asthma attacks. Imagine children like those in my city now being able to play outside without having to suffer from the impacts of asthma. Improved local air quality will prevent premature deaths from respiratory diseases and cancer. Those most likely to benefit are people in communities that have often left behind, such as those in Justice 40 communities. Disadvantaged neighborhoods that often suffer from industrial and commercial pollution the most. In the Capital District in New York, air and ground pollution has led to hundreds of thousands of people suffering from cancer and other diseases, leading to premature deaths and devastated families. Nothing is worse than seeing the horrible impact of family members who have lost a loved one prematurely because of the impacts of these pollution. On a more macro scale, climate change is a global threat multiplier. Worsening climate change will disrupt economies and societies, having profound effects on peace and security. Once in a century storms, droughts, and wildfires now happen several times a season. This has resulted in food shortages, mass migration, high inflation, and civil unrest. Extreme price volatility in agricultural markets ignite unrest. For example, prior to the civil war in Syria, Drought played a key role in mass migration to urban areas. That put a lot of pressure on government institutions, which they were quickly overwhelmed. This increased tensions in the country, ultimately resulting in a civil war. In 2010, we saw the impacts of high food prices from climate change in Egypt and the Arab Spring. We have seen similar situations around the world, such as Chad and Sudan. There is no corner of the world that hasn't been impacted negatively by the effects of climate change, and these changes are evident. As you can see, the IRA has a massive impact on society and the economy. However, that impact is much more than the $370 billion set aside from the federal government. This money will be multiplied throughout our economy multiple times. This will lead in newly created jobs that will help families and households climb into the middle class, resulting in expanding an economy. Additional investments in the environment from states and local communities will also benefit those in our communities as well as our states. This will further multiply the IRA money. The estimated impact of all these investments in the economy is well over $1 trillion. As chair of the National Task Force, I ask that you don't let your community or state get left behind. You've heard Alex speak so eloquently about the importance of the National Summit and the IRA. If you are an elected official or finance and implementation partner, a nonprofit organization, join a national task force created by EOPA and the Department of Energy. If you are a concerned resident, encourage your local and state representatives to join the task force. A new clean energy economy will benefit us all. Join our efforts. Together, we can create our environment, an environment for the better. The world is literally counting on us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it turns out, do we have Senator Spearman here? Okay, great. Senator Spearman was elected in November 2012 to the Nevada State Senate, representing District 1, becoming the first openly lesbian member of the Nevada legislature. She was reelected in November 2016 and served as co-majority whip since. Regarded as one of the most liberal members of the Nevada Senate, Spearman has introduced bills that provide equal pay for women, support LGBTQ rights, and support veterans. Spearman is also a supporter of the Equal Rights Amendment. Moreover, she was involved in the process of establishing the Nevada Revenue Plan during the 2015 session. Before being elected senator, Spearman served in the United States Army for 29 years, reaching the rank of lieutenant colonel. Was a pastor and has held several public service positions, including the president of the school district of San Marcos, Texas. Thanks for joining us.
Always ask them, please don't read all that stuff. Good morning, everybody. I am State Senator Pat Spearman. I now serve as President Pro Tem for our Senate, and I am so happy to be here. I've got a bunch of stuff that I was going to say, but everybody's already said it. So let me just do this. I'd like for everybody to just close your eyes, and a week from tomorrow will be Thanksgiving. And I want you to imagine everyone that's sitting around your table. I want you to imagine what you're about to eat. I want you to imagine sitting back, too full, but yet you're anxious to watch the football game. Now open your eyes. There are some families for whom tomorrow, a week from tomorrow, will not be that pleasant. We've talked a lot about climate change, and we've talked a lot about the money that is necessary to make sure that we at least try to reverse the impact of our reckless use, if you will, of fossil fuels. But I'd like for us to think about the human impact. There are some reports that say that as many as 6 out of every 10 deaths that happened in Iraq, and Mary, you probably know this, was the result of garden fuel convoying fuel, dispensing fuel. And unfortunately, or fortunately, people that are injured now on the battlefield live longer because of advancements in medicine. But the other side of that is living longer means that for many, it's PTSD, traumatic brain injury, multiple amputations. And that's just for the veteran. That does not include what it means for families. For when the veteran comes home and they have to adjust to a new normal. When the veteran comes home and the community that they left still rejects them. For the veteran who comes home and now because of injuries cannot find employment. When we talk about climate change and when we talk about the Investment Reduction Act, I want you to listen to everything that my colleagues have said, but I also want you to imagine what it feels like when we don't act responsibly and try to reverse the effects of climate change. You know, a few years ago, and I'm one of those people that remember, I had my first car in 1973. And I remember going and filling up and I could get gas for about 22 cents a gallon. Anybody in my time zone remember that? Yeah. And I remember as the price of gas began to escalate and it got up to $1.25, and there's some people, if it goes much higher, I'm not going to be driving. Then it got to $2. Then it got to $3. Then it got to $5. How much higher does it have to go before we quench our thirst for fossil fuels? And getting energy from people who don't like us. And they have a stranglehold on our economy. Because for the people who have to pay $2, $3, $4, and $5 a gallon, those are the people who bust the tables. Those are the people who are in the gig economy. Those are the people who drive the buses. Those are the school teachers. Those are the people who are working the minimum wage jobs. Those are the people for whom this is an actuality that is beyond research. They're our neighbors. They're the people we sing in the choir with. They're the people that we stop and chat with by the frozen food section. So when we start talking about why and the importance of the Inflation Reduction Act, remember all of the statistics. Remember everything that has been said. And I couldn't add anything to that, but I want you to remember the human toll. The human toll. One of my nephews asked me one time, I picked him up from school and getting ready to make him snacks. And I remember going to the microwave and putting the snack in the microwave. And he asked me, he said, "So Auntie, did you use the same kind of microwave for your snacks when you were in school?" I said, "We didn't have microwaves then." And he said, "No microwaves? How did you eat snacks?" I said, "It's called peanut butter and jelly." Well, imagine 20, 30, 40 years from now, when your children are talking to their children or grandchildren, and they have to explain what it was like to go to the park and sit by a tree, what it was like to actually be able to go outside and play, what it was like to look up and describe a blue sky, a clear sky, what it was like to actually be able to breathe without an asthma pump. So when we talk about the importance of the Inflation Reduction Act, it's more than just right now. It's about the generations to come, and those generations, and those generations. And I believe we have a moral responsibility to act with urgency, extreme urgency, to partner local, state, federal, and international to reverse these adverse effects of our thirst, our unquenchable thirst for fossil fuels. Here in Nevada, I've sponsored several bills, several of them to bring back solar, but I've also sponsored bills to make sure that we expand our renewable portfolio standards to include geothermal. I'm heading up a task force this interim to look at how we might be able to include hydrogen fuel cells as part of our option. Things that I have said over and over and over again is that the threat that this whole climate change poses to us is not one that will be answered with a singular answer, but it will be multi-pronged. And so we have to look out and see every tool that we might be able to use. Why? We owe it to the families that will be sitting around the Thanksgiving table a week from tomorrow. We owe it to them. We owe it to them. Touch the person next to you and say, we owe it to them. What you gonna do about it? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we actually already have questions coming in online, but we'll open it up to everyone here in person first. Any questions?
We're just studying along with
I have a
our.
question. Okay, so, everybody's so optimistic and all of the goals are wonderful. I'm a county commissioner from New Jersey. My name is Karen Fitzpatrick, and we also have goals of completely electric vehicles by 2035 and completely renewable energy by 2050. But what we also have are massive disinformation campaigns. Do you have that? How are you dealing with that? That's my question. No? Everybody?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll
go.
jump first. Yeah. Yeah.
Sure, okay.
I mean, of course, I think since. Thank you.
Okay, now, there we go. We're facing that in every single community in America, but I think as elected officials, we have to do two things at the same time. We have to continue to move forward in our ambitious goals and dreams, because what you've heard, our communities deserve and need and want us to do that. I'm of the cohort of mayors that we call ourselves the crisis mayors. We were elected in 2020. We, from the jump, have been doing nothing but crisis after crisis after crisis. What I have found to be the most important over the last year is that we stop and think about what we're doing moving forward and not just in this response mode all the time. It's easy to operate in response mode, particularly as veterans. We're conditioned for hard times. We're conditioned to operate when things seem crazy. And sometimes I find it in my comfort zone. And so what I've had to do is stop and dream and move forward. And I think we have to bring people along, but my mom gave me wise words when I was running for mayor the first time. You can't say the right thing to the wrong person. So how much time are you spending trying to convince people that climate change is real instead of looking for the people that already believe it and partner with them and build that coalition? So I want to give that credit to my mom because she's super awesome.
Any other questions in the room, in the back?
Hi, Igor Trego, former Berkeley Land Board Commissioner, member of the EOPA California Council. Thank you so much for each and every one of you. And when I was listening to you, I had a feeling of wistfulness. I'm in California today. California stands at the precipice of later today, the California Public Utilities Commission having a vote to curtail solar for renters, schools, and farms in contravention to everything that the IRA is about. What you're doing is incredible. What advice do you have for states where agencies are still captured by the investor-owned utility monopoly or other monopolies so that they can learn from you and begin to lead the way?
Gregor, do you want to talk about your unique way you're working with the PUC and others? Hawaii is actually a leader in this.
So we have a goal of 100% renewable by 2045. And who's leading the way is actually Kauai. They're a co-op. And they're going to reach 100% renewable before the state does with our policy. It's the hardest thing is what one of the questions regarding the misinformation. And the reason why I bring this up is because even our residents, where we're trying to push solar, wind, geothermal, they're opposed to it because they don't want it in their backyard. And instead of NIMBY, we're trying to create YIMBY, it's yes in my backyard. So collaboration and partnership is definitely key. So don't give up on that and always try your best. And it doesn't hurt to have a grassroots effort and a coalition of like-minded individuals to help support you as well.
And the other quick thing on that is there are various creative ways you can regulate the public utilities commissions or the equivalent in your states. So in many states, the energy or the energy technology committee will oversee it. But the way it's designed right now is the basically regulated monopoly allows these pretty much what they want to do, it gets approved in most places. Hawaii and some other states have been innovative and said, hey, actually your percentage, the 10 to 12% guaranteed income they get because they're a regulated monopoly, is actually dependent on how well you perform, not reactive to, oh, a storm came, now we raise the rates to repair everything. So the Northeast has done that, gas lines to be able to prepare them, right? And ideally, we need to phase those out. But so there are creative ways of using the legislative process to change how the PUC regulates the investor-owned utilities so that it's not, hey, the same old reactive and you guaranteed 10 to 12% return when you build a giant power plant. So it's coming, but it's unfortunately a little slow. So there are ways to do it.
You have a question right here?
Yes, it has to do with Hawaii. Yeah, I think you picked the correct year for 2025. I fear 2030 because if we hit 2030 with a small effort to mitigate climate change, it's too late. So I would like to hear from each of you whether or not you have the ability to convince those around you when you go back to establish the proper route to take, that 2025 is the maximum.
I feel like I've spoken too much already. We do want to hit it as soon as possible. I think that's the last. We want to hit it as early as we can.
Yeah, we have to.
Yes.
Yes, I have a number of online questions coming in. There's kind of a theme coming up about important approaches that the IRA is using and all of you can use to reach marginalized and underserved communities. Can maybe a couple people speak to this one?
Well, I think the underlying theme should be that the state and the local and the federal government need to work together. Like I said, in Illinois, we passed CEJA with a equitable lens to make sure that we do address and gear resources to those in the marginalized communities. And so I think it's a strong leadership from the state and local, working with our federal partners to be able to get those monies and those funds to where they would be best suited and best used.
Talk about HBCUs.
Well, I mean, I think it's two things. I mean, I believe that we have to train the infrastructure to get us there. Right in today's marketplace, we do not have the trained infrastructure to get us to 2030 or nowhere near it. You know, as the energy sector is going this way, you know, the retirement alone between, you know, electrical and mechanicals is down almost 15%. You know, and their kids don't want to follow their parents into that same field. So for us, I think our focus is how do we go into these underlying communities and help them understand there's a great job that you can have. We can train you. We can put you in something, put you on a track that you were never on before. So, I mean, we're really excited about, you know, not only the opportunity, but the opportunity to work with states, we have to work with the utilities. You know, and yes, you know, I hear everybody about it's a monopoly and so on, but if we don't figure out, because we got to get back into the grid. And if we don't figure out how to train that infrastructure on being able to work with them and to work with politicians and states and national, then you know, then I think we're going to run into a wall that we've been, you know, the senator made a great statement about, you know, if we don't start thinking about and caring about these other people, you know, how we get there, then we're going to struggle. So we have to. Senator, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, one of the things that we've also done in Nevada, and that is to reach out to community partnerships. As a former pastor, I know the importance of reaching out to especially pastors in underserved communities and to the Black church. And that's one resource that we have not yet tapped. The other thing that I would encourage us to do is to reach out to some of the sororities and fraternities. I know in the Divine Nine, every one of us, as the Black fraternities and sororities, Divine Nine, every one of our organizations has a mandate to do community service. And so this is one of those areas that we could really begin to mobilize and marshal people so that they're not only impacted, but they can have a positive effect on it. So it's the state, it's the city, it's the state, it's the federal, but it's also getting into those communities and making sure that we're showing them. But I'm also a fan of train the trainer. So we go in and we find out who is the leader. And many times it's not the formal leader, many times it's the informal leader. So sometimes it's the one we used to say it's Leroy, okay? It's on the corner. It's the one that people say, well, they're not ever gonna amount to anything, but they're a leader. And so if we can train the trainers and have them to carry the message, so by the time we get into those communities, people will accept the message, because many times what happens is we're parachuting in and trying to tell them instead of walking in and training someone, and when we get there, they're already ready to receive the message.
You know, one of the other things, I don't really need a microphone. One of the other things about they need it for the media, so okay. But one of the other things is that you know, we talk about the veterans, right? They have discipline, they have organizational skills. If we train them in this marketplace, it gives us a workforce that we don't have today. And we're always talking about what we can do more, you know, for the veterans. This is a great opportunity to take advantage of that.
I have a question I'm going to combine. This is for elected officials. What role do you see for elected officials in ensuring the suitable implementation? What should citizens expect from public officials across the country? And then also just in each of your communities, what's the most important provision in the IRA for your community? What's this going to look like?
I think a part of this was in my comments. I think passing legislation that aligns with the Inflation Reduction Act, that hasn't been done already, I think is very important. I think that enables support and putting initiatives in place. You know, going back to the other question, the previous question, in New York State, we've already directed New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to begin looking at how to invest in marginalized communities. And affordable housing has been a discussion that's happened, you know, throughout the year, and it's going to continue. Being able to implement some of these new technologies into that housing and being able to put those investments in place, I think you know, it offers an opportunity to see the benefits of it. And as the senator was saying, you know, word of mouth spreads that these are real technologies. They save money. They are going to be able to enable a healthier lifestyle. So a number of other things that go into that. I think setting the local policies in place, making that commitment state by state, I think that align with the IRA, I think is going to enable that funding to really support efforts that are either in place or will be in place.
I have to echo that. In Illinois, we did pass significant amount of legislation to align with the IRA. And for example, we did the Park District solar expansion to allow park districts to enter into leases for renewable energy development. So electric vehicle charging stations, we passed legislation to require a conduit for EV capable parking spaces in new single family homes and new construction. And we look to our water reclamation districts to allow them to capture and benefit reuse recovery resources from discarded wind and solar, and the list goes on and on. And so I think it's imperative for elected officials to think outside the box to see what the IRA is doing and the good paying jobs. In Illinois, we were already leading, we had 120,000 individuals working and employed with the federal government to expand and to really embrace the power behind the IRA and all that we can do to expand upon that with regards to state initiatives and state legislation.
I'll just add quickly here, as the mayor at the table, I want to encourage my up ballot friends here to get out of cities and towns' way. The way this money is coming to our communities, it's going through the state and it's going down. Unlike IRA funds that came directly to the city that we were able to push out the door quickly. So part of the problem we experience at cities is once it goes to the state, then it goes through the next level of government, then it goes to the county, and then finally the city gets a turn. All those levels of government take a share. They put unfunded mandates on top of us to deal with. And by the time we have our climate action plan, we're ready to roll, 40% of it's already been diluted. So quickly, it takes every level of government working together to create big things. So if you have the opportunity to service the convener in your state, make sure you are bringing mayors, make sure you are bringing county commissioners to the table, because we could do a lot more together than being told directly what to do all the time.
This is one of the major goals of the task force. I mean, how many officials, how many people don't even know about the money for the environment through the Inflation Reduction Act? You'd be surprised. So the goal of the task force is really to inform people of this, inform officials. But beyond that, we have to create partnerships. We've heard about looking at colleges and getting students in those areas. Well, quite frankly, we have to start before that. We have to identify those kids in elementary, middle, and high school that might not need college, but they can get a great career and a profession. And the IRA has money set aside to create these new professions. So it's our duty as officials to work with school districts, to work with not-for-profits in our community, to identify those children and get them into the programming that they need to ensure that they have a great future. It's all that and more. So that's really what we're here for as far as the task force.
And does anyone else want to respond to this one? Okay, great.
I was waiting for John to speak. Now that John has spoken. For Hawaii, I want to point out resilient communities. The impact the IRA is going to have on our environment is a big thing. The reason why is, as everybody in this room probably heard of the wildfires in Maui, that disaster has caused $5.4 billion of a catastrophe that we would have to figure out how to restore. The impact on the environment that this funding is going to have is help us address the drought that we're having, the high winds that are caused by that hurricane. Climate change is a real thing that's happening in Hawaii. And the wildfire in Maui, that climate-induced disaster, has affected us greatly. So by this funding, helping our whole entire planet will help Hawaii in the long run.
All right, so we are a bit over time, so I'm gonna have to wrap it today, but I really wanna thank all of our panelists.